So this is a thrill for me because it's so easy to see your life in terms of the work that you do and think about the way that other people get to live their lives as well.
Yeah.
So sometimes, because I speak to a lot of different people, I get breadth, but I don't get to see those people long term. So I sometimes think to myself, wow, I wish I got to be in a classroom with somebody, or I got to see, do deep dives with them as coaches. How many of you are coaches? We have a lot of coaches here in the room. I dream about coaching sometimes, and I think we all have our strengths of ways that we get to impact the world. And what I love about this panel is every one of them is different, and every one of them is affecting this world in an incredible way. So I'm going to give them an opportunity to talk, because I've already got to speak today, and you're going to hear from them about ways that they can lift up the work that you're doing, and you get to hear how exciting this work is worldwide. So maybe we'll start with Jen.
Hello.
This is Jen Moss, and her husband is here as well. Can I?
Give him the mic.
Thank you. Can you hear me with this one? Okay, great.
That's better.
Yeah.
So Jen Moss is amazing. She's phenomenal. She's here with her husband, Jim Moss. They're married, and they have an incredible platform, Plasticity. Her husband, who is the Chief Happiness Officer, who said that we didn't need to have another person up on stage, decided to stay off. But Jim's amazing. He was a ex-professional hockey player from Canada, which is amazing, and now a Chief Happiness Officer. So Jen, maybe tell us a little bit about what you do.
So Plasticity, I'm hoping that all of you will be on the platform. We created a platform for Waha Sioux so that we could grow this movement and scale it globally. One of the things we believe is that technology, yes, can be used for good. And we need to all be together. We refer to the Waha Sioux experience here as the kitchen party, but then you have to go back and still connect with those people that you met and you collaborated with, and Plasticity is supposed to do that. It's supposed to bring people together in a community and then help you take what we learn here and then create intentional daily habits so that you bring happiness into your own life every day, and then you can go out and proliferate that in your own communities.
I love it. It's amazing, because so many people complain about how technology gets in the way of happiness, and Jen and Jim said, no, we can actually use this platform to actually create incredible amounts of happiness. They're doing an amazing deal with Lululemon as well, right? Is that?
Lulu's been a great supporter of our, of the platform, but just also helping us to understand what it's truly like to have an organization that lives and breathes happiness and cares about it. And it's fun to work with leaders that actually want to make a 10-year vision around happiness. I mean, that is happening. It isn't just living in our hopes and aspirations. It's actually happening where leaders are saying, I'm going to make a 10-year vision around happiness, and we're going to execute on it, and we're going to proliferate. We're going to show up at World Happiness Summit and set swings up in our store over there. And I think that's what we need more leaders to say, that it's real, it's tangible, and it's also attached to performance, and it's okay to talk about profitability and it not be dissonant, that happiness and performance can go hand in hand, because the better we do, the better we can connect with our employees, and it's a win-win and everyone's happy. And that's really what we need to start educating leaders, that it's a good thing for us to invest in happiness and employee well-being.
Because of Jen and Jim and Lululemon, they're on a mission right now to make a couple people happy. It's a billion people happy, is that right?
We have a 1 billion person goal. We want to give 1 billion people the tools, because we can't make people happy. We need to give the people tools so that they can develop their own health, happiness, and well-being and performance. It really is, the highest performing people are those that have those skills, that we call them the hero skills. So hope, efficacy, resilience, optimism, gratitude, mindfulness, all these things are traits. And happiness is not the absence of negative feelings. Happiness is really about being able to have, a really difficult conversations. To create innovative companies, you have to have challenging conversations. You need to be able to be resilient and bounce back from those conversations, and that is what actually builds really great companies. So if we can teach employees to have that ability to feel effective and feel valued and to feel optimistic in states of stress inside of organizations, then we're going to come up with the most amazing products, the coolest technology, and we're going to be extremely competitive. And so that's why we need to bring happiness so it's an advantage in our organizations. And without it, we're just not going to be able to compete in a global way.
So I love this. We're going to come back to Jen in just a little bit, but I love it for a couple reasons. First of all, Jen and Jim both got named Innovators of the Year for all of Canada, which is phenomenal, but I also love, which is amazing. But they're innovating around happiness, and I think the other thing that I love that Jen and I have talked about is that she is oftentimes in these technology meetings with all guys, and she's providing this leadership that's showing us that this isn't a certain demographics within our society, that happiness is something that we can do not only with technology, but we can do this across the globe with different races, with different genders. So we'll come back to you in just a minute. But sitting on the couch with her, which is amazing. Yeah, I'm sorry, give her another round of applause.
Thank you. I love this panel. It's awesome.
So sitting next to her, I feel like a game show host. I've never moderated anything, ever. But sitting next to her is another one of the superheroes. Jim was talking about, like, we've got what's the Marvel equivalent? League of Superheroes here. But honestly, this entire conference is a League of Superheroes. But here's a couple examples of it. On the couch, we have somebody who loves happiness, but is also a professor of economics at Oxford University, which is pretty impressive. Jan Emanuel has not only given so much respectability to this happiness movement with his research, but he also has something very exciting coming out on Monday. So can you tell us about that?
Sure. Is this mic is working all right? Good. Yeah, no, thank you, Shawn, for the kind introduction and perhaps a bit overly flattering. But on Monday, it's also quite exciting for us because, one, it's International Day of Happiness. But at the UN, we also launch a report every year called the World Happiness Report, trying to give a global picture of the state of well-being and job satisfaction and employee engagement around the world on next Monday. So I can't say all that much about it. I can't yet say which country is going to be the happiest country in the world for this particular year, but it's hold your breath and you'll hear about it in the news, I'm sure, on Monday.
I love this. And so I know one of the things I was curious about is that, so you're a professor of economics, you're at this phenomenal university. Why happiness for you? Like, what is it about happiness that says, yes, I want to devote my life to spreadsheets and data because I think that this has an impact?
Well, thank you, Shawn. Yeah, so happiness is important for everyone, so also for professors of economics, but we come with a specific twist to this story, which obviously we're a bit nerdy and we like data and spreadsheets, as Shawn says. We're quite unusual in that regard. But a lot of the questions that I'm sure this panel will try and answer are essentially empirical questions. So how important is it to have a job? What kind of jobs are most conducive to happiness? What are the characteristics on the job that are most conducive to happiness? Stuff around, say, does it make economic sense to put happiness center stage in the workplace? Because it's not a given. For most economists who would say no, because it's costly to put these programs into place. And sure, there may be some benefits, but do the cost and the benefits weigh up against one another? So yes, this is where we kind of come in, and where I've kind of made my life project being about applying data to these questions that are, in my mind, empirical questions, and trying to come up with evidence-based solutions to them.
And what I love about this, too, is that I feel like people have so many different touch points to happiness. For some people, they're like, I don't need to know data. I just want to feel it in my body while I do yoga. And other people are like, I just need the data. I don't want any music going on while I'm doing it, right? Or other people are like, I need to deeply think about what I'm actually experiencing, be able to visualize it to have that effect. Or I need to be in school. And what I love about this is you're getting to hear all these different points that even if you're not a data person, you realize that there's people in the world that are doing this amazing stuff, which leads us to Nick. Nick is not only a statistician, but he's also in love. He's in love. So he's not in love just with positive psychology, but you also have somebody new in your life as well that has brought joy to everything. But I would love, Nick, you have given so much to this field. And I think it's important, right? That we need to be in love and... We've got a statistician in love here. So first of all, how does that happen? And the second of all, tell us a little bit about the work that you do and why you're like not a cranky person from the UK. You're actually an incredible bright light.
How does a statistician fall in love? Actually, if any of you are trying to date, and there will be people in here, the big thing to remember is that you've got a target audience of 1. and you actually have to eliminate as many other people out of your life so that you can find time for that one. And it's the exact opposite of marketing, where you want many people to come to you as possible. When you want to fall in love, you just want 1. So that's the big statistician lesson. So if you write a dating profile, try to put off as many people, okay, rather than attract them, because then you'll get the one person that actually loves you for who you are. Anyway, that's what I wrote. So I did write that, and I did use a website, and it is quite a funny process. And I'm very lucky to have met Zoe. Anyway, that's a different matter. And when you've had bad relationships, you really recognize a good one when it comes along. Yeah. And most of us here will probably had some bad relationships in our lives, and we go through these troughs of unhappiness, and then we experience happiness. But my serious job is around I'm a statistician, and I do metrics. So most of my career I've done around governments, how they measure progress. And I guess that's just been an obsession for me. I sometimes feel we don't have ideas have us. And that you get committed to an idea, and mine was, how do you measure progress, how do you measure well-being, and latterly, how do you measure happiness? And now, having done work with governments and in think tanks, I now do it in businesses, and I think that every business should have a key performance indicator on employee happiness. You know, it's an amazing indicator of, why don't you know how every team in your organization is feeling every month, every week? Because that is amazing data for you, because that's your performance next month, next year, how people are feeling. So that's the work I'm working on with a sort of small startup company called Happiness Works at the moment.
Love it. We'll come back to that in just a minute here. You already know why Eduardo's amazing. Let's give him another round of applause. And last but not least, we have Mark Williamson, who is the founder, CEO, all of the above for Action for Happiness. How many of you know him already? He's phenomenal. The work he's done worldwide is one of the most exciting things we've done. You have 1 million people already on your platform. 1 million people on your platform. You know, I feel good when I help 1 or 2 people. He's helping 1 million people right now with the work that he's doing, and I'd love for you to share with them a little bit about what you do.
Thank you, Shawn. Can you hear me, folks? Yeah. Lovely to be here. I'm director of Action for Happiness, and you've already heard, if you were here yesterday, from one of our co-founders, Richard Layard, who's been such an inspiration to me and so many others around these ideas of what really matters in life. What we're building is a movement that's really kind of represented, I think, in here today with the spirit of all of you wonderful people, which is that we can, as individuals, contribute to a happier world, quite simply. And that's stuff we can do for ourselves, and there's a lot of wisdom, and you've already heard from fantastic people about what we can do to be happier as individuals. But that's not enough. And actually what's lovely about Waha Sioux and what's been at the heart of what we do with Action for Happiness is, how can we together create a happier world? How can we act in ways that bring these ideas into school classrooms, into workplaces, into communities? So, this started with a small idea and has grown, as Shawn said, to a community of 1 million people. We have this amazing honor of the Dalai Lama being the patron of Action for Happiness and was kind of our sort of founder member. And what's been really lovely is that, of course, an online community is one thing, and we have this community of great people here who I hope will stay in touch as Waha Sioux continues to grow and happen. But actually, it's what really happens, and we've seen it in this room, is when people get together face to face in their communities and in their workplaces, in their real lives, that's when change really happens. So our great passion with Action for Happiness is empowering people, not just to connect and say, I want to contribute to a happier world, I want to be kinder, I want to be more grateful, I want to have better relationships, but actually to meet and give each other this support and inspiration. So we have these amazing volunteers who kind of bring, just blow me away with how much they commit, and there's lovely examples of volunteering behind all of what we've seen here as well. But people who say, I want to make a difference locally, I want to get together, and spread these ideas. So just to give one example, a guy called Stan lives in Brighton, a town in the UK. He loved this idea. He said, I want to start a local group in his town. They now have, I think, nearly 2,000 people that meet on a regular basis in their community. They do stuff related to workplaces. But he wasn't happy with that. He said, I want to do something around happy cafes. And I said, well, that sounds nice, Stan. What does that mean? And he said, well, I'm going to convert a cafe near where I live into a place where people can gather and share ideas about happiness. And I said, oh, give it a try, that's great. And he made that happen. And now there's, I think, about 45 of these things around the world. People have just seen what this guy's done and copied it. And we see the same things in school classrooms. And actually, on the subject of this panel on workplaces, it's amazing how much difference people can make when they bring the evidence-based, the inspiration into their workplaces. And I think what these guys here have done to bring evidence to that, to bring technology to that, I think is just really inspiring. So let's,
my turn.
Yeah.
My turn.
Yeah, go ahead.
What we do is we understood at an early age that the role of what used to be the family when we all grew up, mom and dad, mom at home, dad working, it's no longer that reality anymore. Now mom and dad are working, so the ones who are raising the kids are TV, cell phones, iPads. So if the individual is not taught habits that will work for them, it's very hard that they will learn later on in life. But where else can you find a group of individuals where they go every day, and they stay together for 8, in the case of Mexico, 10 hours a day. And that's where it hit us that the new role of corporations, if they really want to last, because this is a game where you have to think of last. I show you in my presentation that we have time. We have more and more time. And a problem that companies have in Mexico is that they cannot retain the talent. It's easier to get it, but especially the millennials. So our work is targeted a lot to corporations to make them understand that their new role is to assume that they have this responsibility of teaching their team members to adapt these healthy habits. Because it is proven that if you are in a surrounding where people are stressed, you will get stress. You were talking about mirror neurons. But what if the opposite happens? I have success cases in Mexico where we went to companies. We started at the top, working with the leaders. And eventually, as they adopted, we brought it down to the bases, to the other levels. And we have these scenarios where employees would go home with these new habits that we're adapting, and they would transform their wife, their kids, and that feeling would be brought back to the company. So it's a win-win situation. And that's what we're doing. We're working on that, and we believe that one of the ways to elevate this awareness, to reach this goal, is to enroll corporations like Lululemon, for example. So they become these new schools of happy habits and well-being habits.
How incredible that would be if we had the organizations like our companies and our schools pumping out this information all the time. One of the questions I have for this group before I do that, first of all, it'd be amazing to start something. I know many of you have started your organizations and try to create positive change, and then suddenly have the Dalai Lama be like, "I'd like to be a member." It's pretty incredible. Right? What an amazing honor. And so I feel like all these people are contributing in various ways, and I think that so many of you are contributing in ways you see up here, and if you would love to pounce on them and talk to them about the different things that you're doing, that's what this panel is for, is you get to hear about how these people are working and be like, I need that research to be able to go into my school right now, or I need this platform to be able to create positive change within my life. So as we're talking about it, obviously because this is introductory level, it's so abstract. So Mark, I was wondering if maybe you could show us one of the things you do to take the data that we have and make it come to life with people. Is there anything you do that's like a...
Yeah, can I stand up and do this?
Oh,
yeah. So something that's really important about our lives and our experience of work is there's there's a lot of nonsense that we are told about what really matters, and I want us to do a little experiment, which is, can you all think of a time in your lives when you felt that you worked at your best? Something really good was happening in your life that you were contributing to, so you felt proud of what you were doing, you felt like this was you working really well. So just take a moment and think about a particular time in your life when you felt that your working experience and your life, what you were doing day to day was really good, and as you would define good. So think about where you were, who you were with, what the situation was. Because there's some real wisdom in this room, and in a moment I'm going to ask you just a few questions about that experience of working, when you were at your best, if you like. So try and think of a really specific time. And now I'm just going to ask you to raise your hands in answer to some questions. So for how many of you was you being able to be at your best at work a time you were really well paid? Put your hand up if that was the case. So okay, a few people, maybe 5% of the audience. Okay, so for how many of you was it a time you worked at your best when communication from the leadership was really, really clear? Hands up. Okay, so some of you, slightly more than for pay. For how many of you was it a time when you felt that the strategic vision of the organization you worked for was really clearly felt, and there was a big kind of strategy behind what you were doing? Good, okay. Now, for how many of you was it a time that you felt trusted and able to do something that you felt was the kind of right thing to do? Hands up. So that's substantially more. For how many of you was it a time that you felt you had positive relationships with your colleagues, that you liked the people that you were with, what you were doing? So yeah, that's huge. And then for how many of you was it a time that you felt that what you did was meaningful, was purposeful, that contributed to something that matters? So thank you for sharing that. So this is really interesting because we get told that what matters at work is pay people well, communicate well, have a great strategy. Of course that stuff matters. But what actually matters most is what you've just told us, I think, which is that actually when we feel trusted, when we feel that we have positive connections with other people, and when we feel that what we do is meaningful, that is when we are at our best. And that was my experience. I was a corporate guy, and I had actually really bad relationships in a toxic environment. I had good pay but no meaning. I wasn't really trusted, and I was miserable. And I left all that behind, and I now have this amazing privilege to work on a happiness-related organization where I find those positive relationships, that meaning, that trust. And so I think that's an example, I think, of wisdom in this room that we all know intuitively, but we get wrong so often in our companies.
I love that. And, one of the questions that we get asked, I give this, somebody approached me one time and she said, I'm the senior HR director of a company, and they saw your TED Talk, and our CEO passed it out to the whole company. I was like, oh, that's great. And she was like, it was awful because this, I was like, nice talking to you. But she said it was awful because the CEO put out a note, said, look, what Shawn has found in his research is that happiness is a choice. So if you're not happy right now, you're not choosing the right things, this is on you. So, which she said, not only was everyone unhappy and wasn't working, but now the CEO was unhappy with her because things weren't happy at the organization. And so the question I wanted to pose to you, because I think that what you described is what we're seeing come out of Nick and Jan's work as well, is that I'm wondering if we could, what role does the company have in people's happiness? Like if happiness is an individual choice, does this need to be a company question, or is the responsibility all on the people? And Jan, maybe you could respond because your research found the same.
It's just a phenomenal question. And I'm so struck by the experiment Mark just did with you, because what we're seeing in the data on millions of people is the exact same rank order, which, and I shouldn't be saying this, but on Monday it'll be published, and there's lots of press releases around this, and it's kind of what you just should stick with in this room. I hope this is not being filmed. But it is exactly that. So we have these 20 different job characteristics, and we are able to associate them to people's responses to being happy. And then economists would think, of course, that the money associated, the higher the money, the more likely you're going to be satisfied with your life or with your job. And what we find is that the only comes in at, I think, spot number 6 or 7. And the stuff that you all raised your hands up on were essentially the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it's that social support, it's a sense of purpose and meaning, it's to have a sense of autonomy as well. And then that feeds into what actually was number 1, is stuff around work-life balance, so that that work doesn't impose itself too much on your life also outside, or in other words, that you can nicely integrate both work and life. in a good way. So those things were actually much more important. The coefficients that we found in our regression models were much more stronger in these items, the ones that you raised your hand on, as compared to wage levels. And even performance pay was even much lower. Anyway, but on your question, Shawn, about is it up to the companies to, I mean, the companies can't force people to be happy. The only thing they do have a responsibility for, and we should keep them accountable for it, is to make the best possible context for people to choose to be happy themselves. And I know I work less with businesses, more with government leaders. And so the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, Sheikh Mohammed has a very strong vision about happiness, but he's very clear about this particular point. It's about the citizens to choose to be happy, but it's the government's role to make the best possible environment to enable people to choose to be happy. So you can't force people to be happy, but it is a shared responsibility between the individual, the employee, and the organization, no question.
So I'd love to add to that because I have a short story, and I think it echoes exactly what you're saying. And we had a company that we were working with, and they had a senior executive pass away after 20 years. He had been with the company, he was beloved. And it was very difficult for the senior leaders to figure out how to support mourning, because we're in this place right now where, you know, we give 2 days off for people that have lost someone, and that's supposed to be our sort of the program in how we support bereavement, and leaders are asked to play a whole bunch of roles like therapist and mind reader, and they don't necessarily have those skills just because of the way that organizations move. You move up into a management and leadership role because that's how you're promoted, but maybe you're not necessarily skilled at some of the skills of a manager than what they require. And so what happens is you're put in this really strange position. So what we believe is that leaders have to just be able to give people the environment that says, we're okay to support all your emotions. You're the whole person showing up to work. And when someone passes away that is really meaningful, giving you 2 days off to bereave and then having you come back and say, okay, now start performing is just disingenuous. And so what we need to do is say, and what they did is we said, let's figure out a way to use the habits that we have. And fortunately, you know, Platform was there for them to create this hashtag that was Remembering Rick. And they spent 21 days sharing videos, pictures, and all the things that they really cared about this person in their environment. And the leadership said, you can mourn, you can feel, and that is what is going to make you feel like we can all work on this together. And after 21 days, they compiled all these pictures and videos and all of this stuff together and created the most beautiful book for his widow, and said, this is how we care about this person. He had meaning, and we took time to actually mourn him. And that is when their team rallied, they engaged, they created an even better, stronger team after that. And that is what I feel is happiness. That is what creates engagement. And it's about taking these nuances of emotions and saying, let's all do this together, and I support you, and it take as long as you need, and have the freedom to feel, and then we can all pull through this together. And that created, you know, so much more engagement in that organization. It retained people. And I think that is really that key, is that you have to support every single person in their individual experience at work, and then find ways to be able to scale that through, you know, unique ways. And it's very individual to the company too.
That's incredible. That's incredible. That gives me so much hope for what our companies could do, because some of them are like, we want to do something, what do we do? And I think you're giving them a perfect example of what that is. Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very interested in systems, and I think we're shaped by systems much more than we realize. You know, if I'd been born 100 years ago, even with the same genetics, I'd be very different growing up in a different culture that was 100 years ago. And our organizations shape us. It's absolutely certain from the data. You'll all have, you know, if we walk into a room and there's an atmosphere of feeling, we adjust our emotions to what's going on in the room. You know, maybe we walk to work and we're really exuberant, and we come in and it's very tense. We just immediately settle into the mode that's around us, try and work out what's going wrong. You know, if you're really tired at the end of the day and your partner wants to go out to a party, you may be really upset, don't want to go, and then you go there and you lift yourself. So we are very, very influenced by the systems around us, and organizations really do shape us a lot. And organizations can both give us the space to lead amazing work lives, and they can really, really undermine our ability to do that. And so absolutely the most efficient and effective way to intervene is at a systems level. In government policy, it's the same. It's really, really efficient and effective. So, happiness is a choice, but it's a constrained choice. It's constrained by the systems we're within. And so shaping those systems is a fantastic way to intervene in this. And I think it's really important to sort of acknowledge that. And, building on the sort of work that Jan Emanuel's doing is that if we look at data, I did a big piece of research with an organization called Robert Half here. They're a recruitment agency. It's on their website. It's called Work Happy. But one of the big findings we found was that people prefer to work in small organizations. They are much happier in organizations that are less than 100 people. And there's actually something called a Dunbar number. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's 150, and it's over 150, and an organization starts to lose its humanity. And it comes absolutely clear through the data. So if you work in an organization, you've got to create smallness in the bigness. You've got to create, ways that we can do that. And so when I see something that says that Google is a fantastic place to work, I always think, nah, it can't be. Too many people. And it will be a mum and pop place. It will be somewhere small that's really exciting on a project. Those will be the best places to work because they're like our kinships, our families. We've grown up, our evolutionary history is very important in this. We've grown up in small tribes, small clans. This is where we are our natural habitat is in groups of people less than 150. And our organizations to get above that struggle. And that's just really statistical evidence. Just shows that, these systems shape us a lot.
I think that's incredible. And it makes me wonder, because we want Waha Sioux to grow and be a worldwide movement, but it's already more than 150 people. So
but that's okay. That's okay because,
but maybe we're superhuman now.
And the way you're breaking it into smaller things and smaller conversations is the way to do that. And the way that large organizations that are successful is they create small teams and small divisions. They give autonomy to those. It's, but if a large organization is too hierarchical, which some systems have to be, then, it's going to feel less human. And we're humans, so we like systems that feel human. That's just very natural for us.
I love that, because I got an email recently from somebody who was a nurse, and she worked for the massive hospital, doesn't feel like she gets any type of information, but she did a small little book club around a positive book that she did with her team, and then every patient that would come in, she would make them write out something that they were grateful for and put it in a little thing, and they enjoyed that whole process. Totally. But she created that tribe that you're describing, and I think what's interesting is that, even as this expands to be a worldwide movement, or if you're working at a global company, I love what you're saying there, because it's a reminder that you need to find your tribe there, not in a cliquey way, right? We don't want to create cliques, but in a way that allows us to be recharged to help other people. I mean, you said something interesting that I want to ask Eduardo about, because you're asking about how things have progressed over time, and I'm really curious. I wonder if I'm curious for people here too. Do you think it's easier or harder to find happiness in the modern workplace?
I think this is an option, but before anything, I studied marketing. So I was in a way trained to manipulate. I learned this art of priming. And if I'm not mistaken, there are $600 billion invested into marketing every year. The top information is reached by those who can pay for it, and those are corporations. And corporations are the ones who are running this war today. So if you have that massive amount of information telling you what to think, what to do, what to accept, to what tribe to belong or not, and you have people working more hours, making less money, they want everything fast, they are not really taking good care of their health, it's a very difficult scenario for people to take time and say, who am I? What do I want? What do I need? Where am I going? It's what I was explaining to you. Learn the rules of the game. When we give our programs, our certifications, and we ask this question to people, they are like, and it is true. It is our responsibility at the end. It's not the government who's going to take care of us. It's not the corporation. The corporations want to take care of us because if we're good, we produce more. And that's okay. But unless you learn the rules of the game and you design a strategy, you're going to lose the game. If we look at Mexico, the States, obesity, top, rank 1 and 2 in the world. So you can tell me, yeah, I'm happy, but are you really healthy? Isn't health important to be happy? Because if we, imagine in my case, I keep saying this, 120 years. My parents told me when I went into this 100% of my time, I was 40. My parents said, you're in your middle age crisis. And I said, no, if I'm going to live 120, I'm on my 1/3 age crisis. and if I'm going to, just imagine, a professional athlete to get to the Olympics needs to train 10,000 hours. 10,000 hours is 5 years, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. So every 5 years, if you have the genetics, you can be a professional athlete. You can learn a language. You can reinvent yourself. Lift your hands who's on their 20s. Who's here on their 20s? Lift your hands. Who's here on their 30s? Who's here on their 40s? Who's on their 50s? Okay, I want to ask more. but I want you to think about it. If you're in your 20s and we're looking at 100 years of age, it's 8 decades to go. If you're in your 30s, it's 70 years. Think about it. You have to start planning your life in terms of decades, because that's what we're looking at. The world is changing. And you know what? Science and technology are going to make us live longer. And when your family member is asked to pull the plug, they don't like to do that. And I don't know anybody in this world who's happy, who wants to go. Because you have family members, you have those who you love. So who's going to take care of you? You saw my friends, my dudes, my buddies, Rafa, Jacob, and those people are from, before to the X generation, baby boomers. So the importance of knowing how we work. I cannot extend, and repeat that over and over again.
Love that. So what I want to ask, and Jen, I want to ask you this, and Mark, so let's say that the companies buy into what Eduardo was saying, and they've bought into this research, and they're like, yes, we want to make this world a better place. What do we do now? Like, we agree. Happiness sounds great. What do we do? Now, this doesn't have to be just because I know you work more at the grassroots level too, and so I want to get two different types of approaches, so maybe Mark will start with you. So what do we do next?
So it's a great question. Can I just do a little survey? How many of you here say you're happy in your working lives? Put your hand up if you say you're happy at work. That's quite amazing. I can't quite see perfectly the audience, but that seems like a massively higher proportion than you'd find in most people's working experience. And I think what's going on there is in this room we have a lot of what I think both Nick and Jen mentioned, which is people who are kind of their whole human selves. And I think this is the thing that so many of our cultures don't have, is people go to work with their work hat on and they lose a bit of that humanity. So I think what leaders can do if they want to create happier organizations is to start actually with their own values and their own behaviors. So as an example, we've done a lot of work in schools. When you go into schools thinking, I want to make the kids happier, you discover very quickly, I know you know this as well, Shawn, is that actually it's about the teachers. If the teachers themselves are unhappy, you're never really going to change the atmosphere in the classroom. The same's true in any organization, actually. If the people who are making those decisions about where the organization is going, if they don't understand this, if they don't experience what it is to be mindful, to be grateful, to be caring, then the culture will reflect that. So we go into organizations and my colleague Vanessa's here. She's going to talk about the 10 keys to happier living tomorrow. But when we go into an organization, unless the leaders get this, that there are practical things you can do to be happier, that kindness matters, that relationships matter, that meaning and purpose matters, that resilience and coping and dealing with adversity, as we heard so inspiringly, that matters. When they get it, then you can create a culture that changes. So I think it's about being your whole human self and being vulnerable, actually, that word that Brené Brown uses so well. If you can bring your imperfect self to work and say, look, I got that wrong, but that's okay, that's humanity, that's what really changes culture.
Jim, what would you say? And how does your platform relate to that?
Well, it's really been an evolution for us because we started this, we're orthogonal, and we say we're accidental entrepreneurs, and it wasn't expected that we would be where we're at, and it really just was this idea that kept continually pushing us forward. And what we've realized is that happiness is so complex, it's so personal, you can't define it. I mean, we have a lot of really great models and research, and there's concepts that I think we all believe in, but when you think of every single person having their own experience and understanding around happiness, how do you go into the workplace and then say this is how we should create a happiness movement inside of the workplace? It's very, very difficult to do that, and I think that's why this, app turned into a platform, and Jim and I are still, 6 years in, and amazed that we're still here and still moving towards a goal that we feel like, is going to be a lifelong goal. And what we started to really understand about that is that every single workplace is like an organism, or is like a brain, or is like a personality. And what we have to do is go in and understand how to ask the right questions of the persona or the brain of that organization. And it's different for every single small team. It's different from engineers have a different interpretation of happiness than marketers do, and coaches versus programmers. So what we've had to do is figure out what the nuances are for every organization, and then figure out how to ask the right questions around motivation and inspiration and intrinsic desires and all those things that actually help organizations develop the individual their own individual well-being, and then try to create collective well-being, and then see how that translates into outcomes. And it's about asking questions, and asking the right questions, and asking questions about the whole person. Not saying, do you feel satisfied in your job, or, do you feel engaged? I mean, those are outcomes. We need to say, do you feel hopeful? Do you feel inspired? Do you feel like you're effective? Do you feel cared for? Do you have friends that you feel give you psychological safety? Can you fail? Can you feel the freedom of failure or risk-taking? Those are questions that ask about the whole being. And then it's also, how do you feel when you go home at night? Do you feel connected to your family? Do you come to work feeling like the stress of your home life is impacting you at work? That brings in all those pieces of the puzzle that make up that person's experience at work, and then you say, okay, here are the tools to help you identify your own needs to get better and healthier and more well, and then it contributes to the organization. So I would say number one thing first, again, researchers, this is what we like to do, is ask questions and analyze, but it's about asking the right questions to get to the right answers, so that happiness can just be part of what is experienced and not asked for or not expected.
Yeah, Shawn, if I can comment on both Mark and Jen, I mean, you're absolutely right. The kind of questions that the managers ought to be asking of employees needs to be much more holistic than the classic questions of, are you engaged at work, or are you satisfied with your job? Because it neglects the larger chunk of your life. But that being said, and having to add some data to these items, of course, on employee engagement, we're incredibly low. So Mark's experiment with you're really an exception. Most people are not happy at their work, and in terms of employee engagement, only 13% worldwide will say they're actively engaged in their job. So there's a huge room for, or much potential for doing a good job, and we all do have kind of a responsibility of doing that. In terms of the kind of things that Mark and Jen were talking about in terms of how can we actually help business and organizations do better, yes, asking the right questions, yes, going towards values and vulnerability, but again, putting on my economist hat, we also got to think about the incentives. And colleagues of mine, it wasn't my research, but I was involved to some extent, but a great piece of research showed that in one sentence, it's not just how much you pay people, but also how you pay people. And what they found is that controlling for the actual level of income you get at the end of the year, it was the way that you were paid that made a difference to people's well-being, holistic sense, not just job satisfaction, life satisfaction. What they found is that if you can pay people by way of, say, group bonuses as part of your pay package, or give people a share in profits at the end of the year, and controlling for the fact that it would end up at the same level as your otherwise previous salary would, we found that there was, well, they found, that there was a slightly higher level of life satisfaction overall. So the same pay, but structured differently in terms of incentives to get people to work together, collaborate, and feel part of the organization. That was such a big difference to people's life satisfaction.
I'm a statistician. I like decimal places. That's quite sad, yeah. I find that most people don't. I think the measurement can only take us so far. And I always say to our clients, the measurement is the start. It's actually, how does it provoke conversations? How do people interact? And so I've become very interested. I actually think the measurement is the most trivial thing. We can build an app and we can measure and we can make it beautiful, and there are beautiful examples out there. The difficult thing is having people to talk about the data, talk about what it means. And I get more and more interested in learning from religions or from, religions basically impose a sort of ritual and a rhythm, or encourage people to involve in a ritual and a rhythm to that. Every Sunday you go to church, every Friday to the mosque, whatever it is you do, or if you meditate, it's a certain amount of time each day, and there's a ritual and a rhythm to that. And I think we need to have new rituals and rhythms in our organizations, so why not every Friday have a 1-hour meeting about how your week was, and just talk to each other in your teams about how it was, because out of that will emerge happiness. From a pure systems thinking perspective, happiness is an emergent property out of a healthy functional system. And so if you create a healthy functional system in your teams, they will become happier. They will be more creative. They will be stronger bonds with them. They will help deal with the frustrations of work, because work is never perfect. But I think you need to impose a ritual, and work, impose is the wrong word, create a structure around it.
Just on that point, we've been working with, talk about rituals, we were working with Orlando Health, just around the corner, not here, but in Florida. And they're a hospital, tier 1 trauma hospital. When the Pulse night shooting occurred at the Pulse nightclub, one of I think the worst shooting spree that's happened in the United States, all the trauma patients, you can see the hospital from the Pulse nightclub. And we've been working with it for 2 years before. One of the rituals that they created is every morning when they start their meetings, they would do the gratitude exercise that Tal and everyone else has been talking about. That's how they would start their meetings. And on the morning after the most horrific event that they had ever experienced, that the United States had experienced, we saw that they started with the things that they were grateful for, and that was the ritual to keep things going. And I love that we need those things when life gets difficult. So yeah. I want to, because it says time's up in huge gold letters up here. So I wanted to conclude with one last thing, because I think that's important, because first of all, the reason we had this panel is because we want you guys to flood them at some point to find out how you can collaborate, build up what they're doing, join their platforms, find out how to get them involved with your business. If you need the research, they've got it. They'll talk to you for hours, right? Cell phone numbers, we'll give those out in a second. Grassroots movements. But please follow them. Please find out what they're doing. Connect with them. This is how we spread things out. We want more of you on stage if we ever do this again, because all of you have great stories like this, and we'd like to do it. Where I'd like to do it is rapid fire. If everything works out in your life, you've been successful you've dedicated your life to creating happiness in other people. What does it look like? Very briefly, what does it look like that you actually did what you wanted to with your life, and this is the outcome for it? Maybe we'll do Ardwater, we'll go this way, and we'll conclude with Mark.
Start with me?
Sure.
Repeat the question, please.
It's, it wasn't a very clear question, was it?
No, time's up.
If everything works out like you wanted it to, you've lived the life you wanted to, you've dedicated yourself to happiness, what does the world look like because of what you've done?
People will be more in touch with themselves, and corporations would make human beings their priority.
I love that. That's perfect. Nick, can you top that?
I thought going to Mark.
Your turn, buddy.
He's in love. He's not even thinking about this panel, right?
I thought you said, what would my life look like? So I was going to go this. It's going fine, thank you. But I think that I believe in the Buddhist phrase, there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. And life is difficult. And I don't expect to remove everybody's unhappiness in this world. But I think if we could become wiser and kinder, that would be a very good thing.
I'm just going to echo what's being said. I hope that at the end of my life, governments and business leaders will honestly and truly put human well-being center stage in their policies.
Jim and I have always said that we wanted plasticity to be obsolete because we've coached kids, as early as 3, so that by the time they go into the workplace, they aren't practicing gratitude anymore. They are grateful. They're not practicing empathy. They're empathetic. And that's what I want to see. I don't want to be in the job anymore.
How do you follow that? Wow. One of the things we have with Action for Happiness is a course that our volunteers run that involves an exercise, which I love this question, is a bit like this, and it had a really profound impact on my life when I was asked to imagine my future self and look back at my current life, and we do this with all of our participants. And what I found myself saying when I thought about, what would future self recommend about what I do now based on what might be the legacy or lasting impact, was just this really profound sense of actually forget some of the day-to-day noise that we all get so caught up in, spend more time with people you love and creating more of those loving relationships, and more time focusing on the things that really matter, the projects you care about. And I think what's so inspiring about this whole summit and everything we've heard here is that this is people following their passion, and our great passion is this happier world, more kindness, more collaboration, more happiness for everyone, the kids, the workplaces, the community at large. So let's make that happen, everyone.
The selfie. Just take a selfie. Here.
So we're out of time. Eduardo wants us to do a selfie with you guys in the background, if you guys be willing to do that.
You okay?
But I just want to say that I just think that before we do that, to conclude, I want you to think about if any of these panel members was one of your children or your best friend or your spouse, how proud you would be to the work that they're doing in the world. Give them a round of applause like that.